Hey everyone, welcome back. So, in this episode, I want to talk about the offensive explosion that's been happening in the NBA, particularly over the past two seasons or so. Um, quick background. We've heard about guys scoring 70 points before. And of course, we've all heard about the famous 100-point game by Wilt Chamberlain. But this was happening primarily in the 60s and 70s when there was a huge size disparity between certain players and the guys who were guarding them. We didn't see many of these performances in the 80s and 90s. There may have been just one, I believe. But fast forward to 2006. Kobe Bryant had one of the most iconic performances in NBA history when he scored 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. Since then, no player has had a scoring performance even close to that for the next 11 years or so, until Devin Booker scored 70 in 2017. So, what I'm saying is, throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, these types of performances were few and far between. Now, between last season and this current season alone, there have been four 70-point performances. Last season with Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard each scoring 71, and this season with Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic scoring 70 and 73 respectively. This season, we've also had guys like Giannis, Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, and Steph Curry putting up 60-point games. And that's not even mentioning the multitude of 50-point games that we've seen as well. Isn't it crazy that scoring 40 points in the game today has become so commonplace to the point where it's really not overly impressive like it used to be? And it's not just individual scoring, but team scoring on the whole has risen significantly, with the highest scoring team so far this season averaging 124 points per game, and that's the Pacers. These numbers were unheard of back in the day. These would have been considered video game numbers or numbers that you see in an all-star game. We're not seeing final scores of 80 and 90 points anymore. And I would think, or I would hope, that nobody really wants to go back to that anyway. When the game was just really slow and very fundamental. But anyway, why is this happening? What is the reason for this offensive eruption? Is it the defense? I've seen a lot of old heads coming out and saying that defense in the NBA is poor or it's weak. And I think that that is highly inaccurate. There are many factors that account for why we're seeing this offensive boom. So let's get into it. Number one, the three-point shot. So the three-point shot has revolutionized the game of basketball. And I guess we have Steph Curry to thank for that. If we go back to 2015 and we look at the up and coming Warriors and the success that they had, I think that other teams started to realize how the game was changing and they started to adapt that same model. So the Warriors model kind of became like the blueprint for other teams to follow going forward, and that still holds true today. So we basically have players at every position, one through five, being able to shoot the three. This was not the case back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, when you had centers only playing around the rim and it was a post up type of game and the scoring was done closer to the basket. Now we have guys like Jokic, Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, Brooke Lopez, Jaren Jackson Jr., Miles Turner, all centers very capable of knocking down threes. And obviously, we know the more three pointers you score is the higher your offensive output because obviously a three is worth more than a two. What this also does is that it spreads the floor. So we've all heard about floor spacing. And what this means is that the offense is more spread out instead of being clustered. So defenders have a wider area to cover or to guard. This opens up the lanes for drives to the hoop. And also, when you have multiple guys on a team who can shoot the three, it makes it harder for defenders to double a particular player because you're opening up other shooters. So that's how the three-point shot changed the game. And it has reached a point where being able to shoot the three is actually a prerequisite for winning a championship. Like, if you can't shoot the three, your chances are really slim. It's that vital. Number two, the pace of the game. So the pace of the game is much faster today than it used to be. We're talking about full court sprints, more trips up and down the floor. So, what this means is that you have more possessions because you're not necessarily using the entire shot clock. Teams often utilize the fast break game so as to not allow defenses the opportunity to get set. Again, making it harder to defend, not because the defense is weak, but because the offensive strategy is geared towards breaking down the defense. Number three, there have been a lot of rule changes since the 80s and 90s that heavily favor the offense. Some major ones have been firstly when they abolished the hand check rule permanently, I believe it was in 2004. So, what this does is that it prevents the defender from putting his hands or his forearms on the offensive player to impede his path to the basket, which would have made it very, very difficult for the offensive player to drive to the rim. The NBA also implemented the defensive 3-second rule, which means that a defender cannot hover around the basket if they're not guarding anyone for more than 3 seconds just waiting to swat your shot. This is now being penalized. So, again, this opens up the driving lanes. Then we come to the introduction of flagrant fouls, which means that you cannot clothesline someone, you cannot whack a guy over the head, you cannot run over someone without consequences. Now you can get ejected if it's severe enough, or at the very least, you give up free throws and possession of the ball. And these rules were absolutely necessary to implement. You have to protect players. You cannot put players in vulnerable positions to get hurt. So now, for instance, it's a rule that you have to give shooters space to land so that they don't land on your foot and twist their ankle. Any contact above the shoulders is being reviewed for a flagrant foul. Pushing a guy in midair is being reviewed for a flagrant foul. Defense is a skill. You're supposed to impede scoring without any illegal contact. If you have to tackle someone to stop them from scoring, that is not a skill. So these rules help to give offensive players more leeway to operate. And I know some of you guys might be thinking, but injuries are still at an all-time high and all this load management and whatnot. But this is not because the foul rules aren't working. This is because of general wear and tear to the body, because of the pace and the athleticism with which these guys play. One thing I will say though, I do like that the NBA has clamped down on flopping and foul baiting. I think that is a good thing that they did. So offensive players do have some boundaries within which to operate. My last point before I close is a very simple one. And it's the fact that guys coming into the league in this modern era are just leaps and bounds more offensively gifted and talented than we've seen in the past. Just with the variety of ways in which they can score, the craftiness, the footwork, the handles, the shooting ability, the speed, the athletic ability. It's just like with everything else in life, I suppose. Things evolve and get better over time. And with advancements in sports science and technology, how could it not get better? Size is another thing. So you have guards coming into the league who are bigger and stronger. You look at a guy like Luka Doncic. Luka is big for his position. Plus, he can score from anywhere on the court. He has one of the deadliest step back threes. So, how do you guard him? Which defense is going to stop him? You can't. And even if you impede his shot, he still has the court vision to find his teammates. So, good luck with that. You've got 7-foot guys like Wemby and Chet who can shoot the three. With their vertical, when they elevate, nobody's blocking that. The defense is powerless. And we still have elite shot blockers in the league today. Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, and those guys. We still have guys that if you put the ball on the floor, they're going to swipe it, they're going to steal it. Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart, and all these guys. Defense is not dead. That is a myth. I just think that the offense today is more equipped to deal with the defense because of the variety of ways in which you can score. You can implement so many different offensive schemes. It's just the overall advancement and improvement of offense that's giving the illusion that defense is poor, but that's not true. So, in conclusion, what we're witnessing in the NBA today is simply good D, better O. That's what it is. Good defense, but superior offense. There has just been a natural progression and evolution of the game, and honestly, I love it. I love this high octane type of scoring. It's exciting, it's engaging, but most of all, it does not take away from the quality of basketball being played or the competitive nature of the game. Make no mistake, games are still close. We're still seeing some thrilling overtime games and double overtime games. It's just that the total score is going to be higher, but it's still a competitive game. And what's really good about it is the fact that no lead is safe. So previously, if a team is going into the fourth quarter with a 20-point lead, you think, okay, game over, it's a blowout, I can turn off my TV. And the team that's up kind of relaxes and takes their foot off the gas because they're thinking it's a done deal. That cannot happen today. We have seen so many 20-point leads disappear and teams come back and win. So that means the teams have to be fully engaged and play at a high level for 48 minutes. And I see people complaining that they don't want to see a 70-point game every night because it's going to lose its appeal, which I get. But here's the thing. We have to accept the fact that scoring 40 points is just going to be the norm from now on. It's just going to be a standard thing going forward. And there's nothing that defenses can do about that. The game has just evolved to that level. But as for scoring 60 and 70, look, a lot of those performances have come against bad teams. When the good teams play each other, you're rarely would you see that. So I don't think we're gonna have that every night, especially since the NBA has the benefit of watching film. So if a guy drops 70 on you tonight, you go back and watch the film and you strategize on how you're going to slow him down in the next game. He's still going to get his usual 35 or whatever. You can't stop these guys completely. They're too good. But you're not going to let him get 60 this time around because you're going to make adjustments. You're going to force the ball out of his hands. You're going to send a trap and so on. And you come up with your strategy from having watched the film. So there you have it, guys. Those are my thoughts on why I think there has been an offensive explosion in the NBA and what I think about the modern era of defense. I highlighted what I think are the main reasons. Let me know if there's anything I left out, if there's anything you want to add, anything you don't agree with. I would love to hear your comments. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.